Some of you came in here tonight broken. You came carrying the weight of disappointment, a dream that didn't work out, a door that slammed shut, a prayer that seemed unanswered. You've been asking God, why did this happen to me? Why did it fall apart like this? But hear me when I say this. God has not forgotten your name. What looked like disappointment was never the end of your story. It was the editing process. God is not finished. He's rewriting your story line by line, chapter by chapter, to turn your pain into purpose. You thought it was rejection, but it was redirection. You thought it was over, but God said, I'm just getting started. Because destiny doesn't begin when everything goes right. Destiny is born in the ashes of what went wrong. So don't cry over what you lost. Start praising God for what He's about to reveal. Because the same God who allowed the disappointment is the same God who's redefining your destiny. You're not stuck in what broke you. You're being set up for what's about to bless you. Disappointment is the doorway to destiny. When life doesn't unfold the way we expected, when our plans collapse and our hearts ache under the weight of unfulfilled dreams, it's easy to believe that disappointment is a dead end. We cry. We question. We wonder how everything we prayed for could fall apart so quickly. But what if disappointment isn't a sign of failure at all? What if it's the divine doorway through which destiny begins to emerge? Every person who has ever walked in purpose had to pass through seasons of pain. Abraham faced the pain of waiting. Joseph endured betrayal and false accusation. David knew rejection, exile, and heartbreak. Even Jesus faced disappointment in those he loved. Yet each of them discovered that what seemed like a setback was actually a setup for something greater. Disappointment doesn't cancel destiny. It carves it. It shapes the soul, strengthens faith, and redirects our steps toward the very thing God designed us for. There are moments when God will close a door not because He wants to punish you, but because He's protecting you from something that doesn't fit your future. You may not see it at the time, but heaven often hides blessings behind the walls of disappointment. You prayed for something you thought you needed, but God saw beyond your request. He saw what would destroy you, what would delay you, what would dilute your calling. So He said, no, not to hurt you, but to help you. Disappointment then becomes a divine intervention in disguise. Sometimes God will let your plans fall apart because they were too small for the magnitude of what He's preparing. You wanted comfort, but He wanted character. You wanted quick success, but He wanted lasting strength. The dream you thought died was only being redesigned. The vision you thought vanished was simply being refined. God will never waste a tear, a trial, or a tragedy. Every painful chapter is part of a larger story, one that leads to destiny. When you face disappointment, you have two choices: to let it define you or to let it direct you. Some people allow disappointment to bury them, others allow it to build them. The difference lies in perspective. When you believe that God's hand is still at work, you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That shift in mindset transforms pain into power. It turns heartbreak into wisdom. It moves you from self-pity to spiritual maturity. Disappointment often exposes what we've been depending on. It reveals where our faith truly lies. Sometimes we trust the plan more than the planner, the blessing more than the blesser. And when God interrupts the flow, He's not trying to harm us. He's trying to bring us back into alignment. He knows that untested faith is fragile faith. So he allows the storm not to drown us, but to deepen us. Every wave that knocks you down is the same wave that pushes you closer to shore. There's a mystery in how God works. We cry over what we lost, only to discover later that the loss was a lesson, that the disappointment was direction. The very thing that broke you became the thing that built you. The job you didn't get forced you to discover your gift. The relationship that ended freed you to find your worth. The door that closed pushed you to the one God had already prepared. You may have thought it was over, but heaven whispered, "This is just the beginning." Destiny doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in conflict, in confusion, in contradiction. God uses the soil of disappointment to plant the seeds of destiny. That's why he lets certain things fail, because he knows that failure is fertilizer. You can't birth destiny without pain. Every birth requires pressure. Every promise requires process. And every process begins with a place of disappointment where you feel like everything is falling apart, when in reality, everything is falling into place. So the next time your plans crumble, don't curse the moment, consecrate it. Don't see disappointment as God's absence. See it as his adjustment. Maybe the delay is protecting your development. Maybe the rejection is redirecting your route. Maybe the silence is strengthening your spirit. What if the disappointment you're crying over is the very tool God is using to unlock your destiny? Think about Joseph in the pit, betrayed by his brothers. Think about him in the prison, forgotten by those he helped. Every disappointment he faced became a divine detour toward the palace. Had he never been thrown into the pit, he would have never reached his purpose. Sometimes the very thing that breaks you is the bridge that brings you to destiny. The truth is, destiny rarely announces itself with trumpets. It often arrives dressed in disappointment. The people who left, the doors that closed, the dreams that faded. All of it was preparation. God never allows subtraction without the intention of multiplication. What he removes, he replaces with better. What he takes away, he transforms into testimony. So when disappointment knocks, don't run from it, walk through it. It's the doorway to a deeper relationship with God, to a stronger version of yourself, to the destiny you were born for. Let your tears water the ground of your next season. Let your heart attach become holy ground where faith grows. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and say, if that disappointment hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. God is still writing. The ink of disappointment isn't permanent. It's part of the process. What feels like an ending is actually the author turning the page. Your disappointment is not your defeat. It's your development. Destiny is on the other side of the door you thought would never open again. So lift your head, breathe again, trust again, believe again. Because the same God who allowed the storm is the same God who will use it to strengthen your wings. The same God who let something end is the same God who is preparing a greater beginning. Disappointment didn't come to destroy you. It came to deliver you into destiny. When you walk through the doorway of disappointment with faith, you'll discover that God was never punishing you. He was positioning you. And when you reach that place of destiny, you'll realize every tear had purpose, every no had meaning, and every closed door was leading you straight to the one that God himself opened just for you. Disappointment, my friend, is not the end of your story. It's the divine doorway to your destiny. Step through it and watch God rewrite your future in ways beyond your imagination. God uses broken moments to build strong faith. There are seasons in life When everything we counted on seems to fall apart, the plans we made, the people we trusted, the dreams we held close, the foundation beneath us cracks, and we find ourselves surrounded by pieces of what used to be whole. In those moments, we often ask, God, where are you in this? But what if the breaking is not the evidence of his absence? What if it's the proof of his presence? Because God does some of his greatest work in the dark, hidden places of our pain. Faith isn't forged in comfort. It's built in the crushing. It's in the moments when life doesn't make sense, when the answers don't come, when prayers seem to echo in silence. That's where strong faith is born. You don't learn to trust God when everything is perfect. You learn to trust him when everything is broken. The storms of life don't destroy real faith. They reveal it. God uses broken moments to strip away the illusions we depend on. The security of money, the safety of routine, the certainty of control. When he allows things to shatter, he's not trying to ruin you. He's trying to rebuild you on a foundation that cannot be shaken. We hold on to things we were never meant to trust, and God, in his mercy, allows them to fall apart so that we can discover that he alone is enough. When everything around you is breaking, that's when God is bending you toward him. The pressure, the pain, the confusion, it's not punishment, it's preparation. It's not rejection, it's refinement. Like gold that must be purified by fire, your faith must go through heat to be proven genuine. God is not trying to break you down. He's trying to break you open. Open to his power. Open to his purpose. Open to his promises. Look at the great men and women of Scripture. None of them were built in easy seasons. Abraham was tested when he had to trust God for a promise that seemed impossible. Moses was shaped in the wilderness after running from his past. Joseph was strengthened in a prison long before he sat in a palace. Even Jesus himself was broken before the blessing of resurrection. Every great story of faith is also a story of brokenness. God uses broken people because brokenness creates room for dependence. Sometimes you don't realize how much you rely on God until he's all you have left. That's the power of broken moments. They strip you of everything false so that your faith becomes real. When you have nothing else to hold on to, that's when you learn that God is unshakable. You learn to pray differently, to believe differently, to see life differently. You stop chasing explanations and start trusting his character. You stop asking why and start saying, even if. There's a beauty in brokenness that only heaven understands. Because what you see as broken, God sees as usable. When he breaks you, he's not discarding you. He's shaping you. Just as a potter presses and molds clay, God reshapes your life through pressure. Every crack becomes a line where his grace can flow. The places where you've been wounded are the same places where his strength will be revealed. The breaking is never wasted. It's easy to believe when everything is working. But real faith is believing when nothing makes sense. It's trusting that God is good even when life is not. It's standing firm when your emotions are shaking, declaring, I may not understand this, but I know the one who does. That's the kind of faith God builds in broken moments. Not shallow faith that depends on circumstances, but solid faith that depends on his word. When you are broken, God is not distant. The Bible says he is close to the brokenhearted. He draws near in your tears. He listens in your silence, and he works in your waiting. You might feel forgotten, but you are being formed. The pain you feel today is shaping the faith you'll need tomorrow. You're not being buried. You're being planted. Think of how seeds work. Before they can grow, they must be buried in the dark and broken open. Only when the shell cracks can life emerge. In the same way, your breaking is not your ending. It's the process of something new being born. God will take the fragments of your story, the heartbreaks, the failures, the disappointments, and use them as raw material to build a deeper, stronger faith. Faith that has never been tested cannot be trusted. That's why God allows broken moments, because He wants to show you that what you carry inside is stronger than what you're going through. Every storm you survive strengthens your spiritual muscles. Every tear you cry waters the soil of your next season. Every disappointment teaches you how to stand when you feel like falling. Sometimes, the greatest gift God gives us is not the miracle we prayed for, but the strength we found while waiting. Broken moments produce that kind of strength. Quiet, steady, unshakable faith that doesn't depend on outcomes but on intimacy with God. You start to realize that faith isn't about getting what you want. It's about trusting that God's will is better than your own. When you look back later, you'll see that the moments that felt like breaking were actually building you. The nights you cried yourself to sleep were the nights God was rewriting your heart. The days you felt abandoned were the days heaven was closest. Every piece of your pain was a piece of the plan. You couldn't see it then, but now you understand it had to break so you could believe. God often lets us go through what we don't want to show us what we need. He uses loss to teach gratitude, failure to teach humility, and heartbreak to teach hope. The brokenness you feel today will become the blessing you share tomorrow. Someone else's faith will be strengthened because you refuse to give up in your storm. So, when everything seems to be falling apart, don't despise the breaking. God is using it. He's using that betrayal to build endurance. He's using that delay to build patience. He's using that unanswered prayer to build dependence. You may not like it, but He's growing something inside you that success never could. Strong, unshakable faith. You see, when God breaks something, it's only to multiply it. He broke the bread before He fed the multitude. He broke the alabaster jar before the fragrance filled the room. He broke His own Son on the cross before salvation filled the earth. Every breaking in the hands of God leads to a blessing. So let Him break what needs to be broken. Let Him rebuild what needs to be healed. Let Him strengthen what has grown weak. Don't run from your broken moments. Run through them with faith. Because when you come out on the other side, you won't just have survived, you'll have been transformed. You'll walk with deeper compassion, greater courage, and unshakable confidence in God's goodness. You'll know, not just in your mind, but in your bones, that God can be trusted. You'll realize that the same moment that broke you was the moment God began to build something beautiful. So, hold on. Even if your heart is heavy, even if your plans have shattered, even if your faith feels small, hold on. Because the God who allows breaking is the same God who brings beauty out of it. You may not understand the process now, but one day you'll thank Him for every broken moment that built your faith. What felt like the end was only the beginning of a deeper trust. What looked like ruin was really construction. God was using the pain to strengthen the promise. And when it's all said and done, you'll stand in your destiny and realize every broken moment was a building block in the masterpiece of your faith. What feels like rejection is divine redirection. There are moments in life when rejection hits so hard it takes the breath out of you. A job you thought was yours slips away. A relationship you believed would last forever ends without warning. An opportunity you prayed for never materializes. And in those moments, it feels like God has turned his back. You question your worth, your purpose, your place. You wonder why the doors you knocked on so faithfully never opened. But what if that rejection wasn't punishment? What if it was protection? What if the no that broke your heart was the no that saved your destiny? God never wastes rejection. He uses it as a tool to redirect your steps toward something greater than you imagined. What looks like loss from your perspective is often alignment from His. Sometimes He has to close the door you wanted so He can lead you to the door you need. Because if you walk through every open door, you'd end up lost in rooms you were never meant to enter. We pray for God to guide us, but we rarely expect that His guidance might come in the form of rejection. We think direction will always feel like affirmation, but sometimes it feels like abandonment. Yet in heaven's economy, rejection is often God's redirection. He blocks paths not to break us, but to bless us later. When God says no, it's not always denial, it's divine navigation. He's steering you away from what would have delayed your destiny. Think about it. How many times have you looked back at something you desperately wanted and thanked God that it didn't work out? The person you thought you couldn't live without, the job you thought was your breakthrough, the door you begged Him to open. Years later, you can see what you couldn't then, that God was protecting you from a disaster disguised as a desire. What you saw as rejection was heaven's redirection towards something higher, holier, and healthier for your soul. God's ways are not our ways. He sees the full story, the entire map, while we only see one chapter at a time. Sometimes He will disrupt your plans because they don't fit His promise. He'll let what's familiar reject you so that you'll move toward what's destined. It's not that the door was wrong, it's that the season was over. God uses closed doors to get you to move. He uses rejection to reposition your purpose. Every no carries a message. Every time something doesn't work out, heaven is whispering, not here, not now, not this. And if you can trust God's now with the same faith you trust His yes, you'll find peace even in the pain. You'll stop chasing what's leaving and start preparing for what's coming. Because divine redirection is not about loss, it's about placement. God is not taking from you. He's making room for better. Joseph in the Bible understood rejection. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery and forgotten in a prison. From a human point of view, he was unwanted, discarded, and rejected. But in God's plan, every rejection was redirection. The pit led to Potiphar's house. Potiphar's house led to the prison, and the prison led to the palace. Every step of rejection moved him closer to his destiny. The people who pushed him away unknowingly positioned him for the throne. That's how God works. He turns rejection into redirection. The enemy thinks he's destroying you, but God is developing you. What was meant to break you ends up building you. The door that closed didn't close because you were unworthy. It closed because you were chosen. You were never meant to fit in there. That environment couldn't handle the weight of your calling. Sometimes rejection is God's way of saying, I'm taking you higher. When you face rejection, it hurts deeply. It wounds your confidence, shakes your faith, and challenges your identity. But remember this, the pain of rejection is temporary, while the fruit of redirection is eternal. If you hold on, you'll see that God's plan was better all along. You'll look back and realize that the thing that broke your heart was the very thing that built your strength. God never removes something without replacing it with something greater. But He can't give you what's next until you let go of what was. That's why He allows rejection, to detach you from what's beneath your destiny. You might be crying over what you lost, but heaven is rejoicing over what you're about to gain. You're not being pushed out. You're being pulled up. Rejection forces you to depend on God in ways success never will. When doors open easily, we often forget who opened them. But when every door closes, when every plan fails, and when every voice says no, you're left with only one place to turn: to God. That's where real faith grows. That's where you discover that your identity isn't in people's approval, but in God's acceptance. He loves you enough to close doors that don't lead to your purpose. Sometimes God will even use rejection as a form of redirection toward healing. The relationship that ended might have ended because you were idolizing it more than Him. The job that didn't hire you might have kept you stuck in a place where your gifts couldn't grow. The friend who walked away might have left because their season in your story had expired. God knows when connections are complete. He allows endings so that new beginnings can emerge. And yet, we often fight to reopen what God has already closed. We knock on doors that no longer lead anywhere. We chase people who have already moved on. But until we learn to accept rejection as divine redirection, we'll keep missing the beauty of what's next. You can't walk into your new season while holding on to old disappointments. Faith is trusting that the closed door was a step, not a setback. When you understand that rejection is redirection, you stop seeing it as loss and start seeing it as leadership. You begin to say, Lord, thank you for every door that didn't open, for every person who walked away, for every opportunity that slipped through my hands, because it all guided me to you. That's when peace floods your spirit. That's when you can rest in knowing that nothing was wasted, nothing was random, and nothing was outside of His control. God will let some people reject you so that you'll finally recognize that you don't need their approval to fulfill your assignment. He'll let a door close so that you'll stop depending on human access and start trusting divine favor. Because when God opens the right door, no rejection can stop you. And when He closes the wrong one, no amount of striving can force it open. You might not understand it now, but one day, when you stand in the place God was leading you all along, you'll look back and say, if they hadn't rejected me, I would have never discovered this. The heartbreak that made you question God will become the testimony that proves His faithfulness. You'll realize that rejection didn't ruin your story. It rewrote it. So lift your head. Don't cry over who left, what ended, or what didn't work out. If it was meant to stay, it would have. Let rejection redirect you toward your purpose. The same God who closed that door is the same God who's opening a better one. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. What feels like rejection today will one day reveal itself as redirection. The path may look unfamiliar now, but it's leading you exactly where you're meant to be. Trust the author of your story. He never edits a chapter without purpose. You may have been rejected, but you are not forgotten. You are being guided. You are being refined. You are being redirected straight into destiny. Delay doesn't mean denial. It means development. There's a deep tension that lives inside every person who's waiting for something from God. You pray, you believe, you hope, and you wait. but the clock keeps ticking and nothing seems to move. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and before long, you begin to wonder if what you're believing for will ever come to pass. The human heart wrestles in that space between the promise and the fulfillment. It's where faith is tested, patience is stretched, and trust is refined. But the truth is, God's delay is never his denial. When it seems like he's silent, he's still working. When it feels like he's late, he's actually right on time. Delay is the classroom where destiny is taught. It's in the waiting room of life that God prepares us for what we've prayed for. Because if he gave us everything we asked for when we wanted it, we'd end up destroying blessings we weren't yet mature enough to handle. God doesn't want to give you something that will crush you. He wants to develop you so that when the blessing comes, you can carry it. The waiting isn't wasted. It's working something within you that the promise alone could never produce. Every great person in Scripture had to wait. Abraham waited decades for the promise of a son. Joseph waited through betrayal, slavery, and prison before stepping into his calling. David was anointed as king, but had to endure years of rejection and hiding before he ever wore a crown. Even Jesus waited 30 years for a 3-year ministry. Delay has always been part of God's divine process. It's not that God forgets his promises. It's that he fulfills them in the fullness of time, not the convenience of ours. In the natural, delay looks like a pause, but in the spiritual, delay is development. When God makes you wait, he's building something in you that can't be built in ease. Resilience, endurance, humility, trust, obedience. These qualities don't grow in moments of blessing. They grow in moments of silence. You learn to pray differently, to listen carefully, and to trust completely. The delay is doing more for your faith than the answer ever could. Sometimes God will delay the dream, not because he's unfaithful, but because he's protecting you from premature exposure. If you step into destiny before you're ready, the weight of success will crush you. God's not only preparing the blessing for you, he's preparing you for the blessing. He's aligning your heart, refining your motives, healing your wounds, and strengthening your character. That's why the waiting season often feels like breaking season. Because before God elevates you, he has to empty you of everything that can't go with you. We live in a world that hates to wait. Everything is instant. Instant messages, instant food, instant gratification. But spiritual growth doesn't work that way. God is not a microwave, he's a potter. And when a potter shapes clay, he takes his time. He spins it, molds it, presses it, and sometimes even breaks it to reshape it again. The delay isn't cruelty, it's craftsmanship. You are in the hands of a God who refuses to rush your process because he knows what he's making out of you is worth the wait. When God delays, he's teaching you how to depend on him. In the waiting, you learn that faith isn't just about believing for an outcome. It's about trusting in a person. It's realizing that even if nothing changes yet, he's still good, he's still faithful, and he's still in control. That's the kind of faith that can't be shaken by time or circumstance. Because the truth is, if your faith only works when life moves fast, it's not faith, it's convenience. Real faith holds on when nothing moves. It believes that the same God who made the promise will be the same God who keeps it, even if it takes longer than you thought. Sometimes the delay isn't about the thing you're waiting for. It's about the person you're becoming while you wait. Maybe God is using this time to grow your patience, to deepen your prayer life, to strengthen your resolve. Maybe he's pruning relationships that can't go into your next season. Maybe he's teaching you to rely on him rather than on human validation. If he gave it to you too soon, you might depend on the gift more than the giver. But when you've had to wait for it, fight for it, and trust through it, you'll cherish it differently. It's hard to see it while you're in the middle of it, but delay often disguises itself as disappointment. You cry, you question, and you feel forgotten. But God is orchestrating something behind the scenes. The doors that didn't open, the opportunities that didn't come through, the relationships that didn't last, they were all part of his protection plan, because sometimes he delays not to withhold, but to redirect. What you think is stagnation is really divine synchronization. God is aligning the timing of your life with the timing of his purpose. There are moments when you'll want to quit, when the waiting feels unbearable, when your prayers feel unanswered, when your hope begins to fade. But remember, faith isn't proven in the receiving, it's proven in the waiting. Every day you keep trusting, every prayer you keep praying, every time you choose to believe even when you can't see, heaven takes note. God honors perseverance. He rewards those who don't give up and delay. When the promise finally comes, you'll realize why it took so long. The version of you that started the journey couldn't have handled the blessing that's coming. The delay wasn't to hurt you, it was to grow you. God had to stretch your faith, mature your spirit, and refine your perspective. What seemed like a pause was really preparation. And when it finally happens, it won't just bless you, it will glorify him. Delay has a way of deepening gratitude. When something comes easily, we take it for granted. But when you've waited, cried, and prayed for it, when you've watched others get what you've been believing for and still held your peace, that's when gratitude runs deep. You'll treasure it because you'll know it didn't come by luck. It came by grace. Even now, while it feels like nothing is happening, something is. Heaven is moving pieces you can't see. God is connecting you to the right people, opening doors behind the scenes, preparing hearts, setting divine appointments. He's not ignoring you. He's investing in you. The silence is not neglect, it's nurture. And when the delay ends, when that door opens, when that prayer is answered, when that promise manifests, you'll look back and understand that it had to take time. The waiting season was never wasted. Every moment was shaping your character, purifying your heart, and positioning you for purpose. You'll realize that the delay wasn't denial. It was development. So if you're in a season of waiting right now, don't lose heart. Don't let impatience make you step out of God's timing. Trust that the one who started a good work in you will finish it in his perfect time. Keep sowing in prayer, keep believing through the silence, keep walking by faith even when you can't see the finish line. Because one day, the waiting will make sense. You'll thank God for not giving it to you too soon. You'll thank him for every delay that developed you, every silence that stretched you, and every not yet that prepared you for his now. What God has promised is still alive, still moving, still unfolding, just not on your schedule. Delay doesn't mean denial. It means development, and development always precedes destiny. So don't rush the process, trust the purpose. God's timing is not late, it's lasting. And when the appointed time comes, the blessing will fit perfectly into the hands that have been patiently prepared to hold it. Your pain is the preparation for your purpose. There's something sacred about pain, not because it feels good, but because of what it produces. Nobody wants to hurt. Nobody volunteers for heartbreak, disappointment, or loss. Yet the very experiences that wound us most deeply often shape us most powerfully. Pain refines, reveals, and rebuilds. It becomes the soil where strength takes root and faith grows deep. You can't fulfill your purpose without passing through pain, because purpose is always born out of struggle. The breaking isn't to destroy you. It's to prepare you for what's next. Every person who has ever done something significant for God has carried a story marked by pain. Moses faced rejection before he led a nation. Joseph was betrayed before he wore a crown. David was hunted before he became king. Even Jesus endured the cross before resurrection. There's a pattern woven throughout the fabric of Scripture. Pain precedes power. The very things you're praying for God to take away may be the tools He's using to train you. Pain has a way of stripping you down to what's real. When life is easy, you can hide behind comfort. But when you're hurting, the masks come off. You find out what's in you. You discover what you really believe. You learn whether your faith is built on feelings or on the foundation of truth. Pain doesn't weaken real faith. It purifies it. It removes the excess, burns away the pride, and teaches you to depend on God, not yourself. Sometimes God will allow pain, not because He's cruel, but because He's cultivating something inside of you that comfort never could. You're asking Him to deliver you from it, but He's using it to develop you through it. He's stretching your capacity, deepening your empathy, and sharpening your discernment. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. What feels like breaking is often God's way of molding you into someone who can carry the weight of purpose. Think about the process of refining gold. Before it shines, it must endure fire. The heat isn't meant to destroy it. It's meant to separate the impurities. In the same way, pain is the fire that reveals the gold in you. It burns away everything that doesn't belong: fear, pride, insecurity, dependency on others, until all that remains is faith that can stand the test of time. It's in seasons of pain that your perspective shifts. You stop chasing applause and start seeking authenticity. You stop asking God for comfort and start asking Him for clarity. Pain teaches you that not every loss is a curse, and not every wound is fatal. Sometimes God wounds to heal. Sometimes He breaks what's fragile to reveal what's eternal. When you begin to see pain as a process instead of a punishment, you'll find peace even in the fire. There are moments when the pain feels unbearable. You can't see the purpose in it. You can't trace God's hand. But trust this: if God allowed it, He intends to use it. The tears you cry are watering the very ground that will one day produce fruit. The prayers you whisper in the dark are building spiritual muscle. You may not see progress, but growth is happening underground. Every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, every heartbreak, it's all preparing you for something greater. Sometimes the pain is what pushes you toward your purpose. If life had stayed comfortable, you would have stayed complacent. Pain forces you to move, to grow, to reach for something more. It has a way of waking you up to who you are and who God is calling you to become. You don't develop purpose sitting in comfort. You find it in the struggle. What was meant to break you ends up building you. There are some lessons only pain can teach. It teaches compassion. You begin to feel for others who suffer because you've walked that road yourself. It teaches patience because you realize not everything can be fixed instantly. It teaches perspective. You learn that what really matters isn't what you lost, but what you gained through the loss. Pain makes you more like Christ because it teaches you to surrender, to forgive, to love even when it hurts. If you're going through pain right now, it might not make sense, but purpose rarely does in the middle of the process. You don't understand what God is building until you look back later. The pain that once felt pointless becomes the very thing that positioned you. That heartbreak you thought would destroy you made you stronger. That setback you thought was the end opened the door to a new beginning. That rejection you cried over redirected you to your destiny. Pain changes how you pray. When everything is fine, your prayers stay shallow. But when you're broken, your words come from a deeper place. You stop performing and start pouring. You talk to God from your heart, not your head. You stop asking Him to make life easy and start asking Him to make you strong. Pain pushes you into intimacy with God. It strips away the noise and distractions until all you can do is cling to Him. And that's exactly where He wants you. Dependent, trusting, surrendered. You can't step into purpose without going through preparation, and preparation often comes wrapped in pain. Before God releases you, He refines you. Before He promotes you, He prunes you. Before He blesses you, He breaks you. It's not punishment, it's process. The same hand that allows the breaking will also bring the healing. The pain is temporary, but the purpose is eternal. There's something beautiful about how God redeems pain. He never wastes it. He takes the very things the enemy meant for evil and uses them for good. He turns scars into stories, wounds into wisdom, and sorrow into strength. Every time you share how you overcame, someone else finds hope to keep going. Your pain becomes the platform for someone else's healing. That's purpose. It's easy to ask God, why me? But maybe the better question is, what are you preparing me for? Because every pain has a purpose, even when it's hidden. You may not see it now, but you will. You'll stand one day in the middle of your purpose and realize that every painful moment was a stepping stone to get you there. The nights you thought you wouldn't survive were the nights God was fortifying your spirit. When a seed is planted, it must first be buried. It sits in darkness, pressed beneath the soil. It looks like death, but it's really development. The breaking of that seed is what allows life to grow. The same is true for you. You're not buried. You're being planted. What feels like the end is actually the beginning of something new. So don't despise your pain. Don't rush your healing. Don't curse the process. God is using every ounce of what you're going through to prepare you for something far greater than you can imagine. You'll emerge wiser, stronger, and more compassionate. You'll look back and say, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. Your pain is not pointless. It's preparation. It's shaping your character, defining your calling, and molding your destiny. The same fire that hurts is the fire that purifies. The same valley that breaks you is the valley that teaches you how to rise. Hold on. One day the pain that made you weep will make you worship. The tears that blurred your vision will give you clarity. The wounds that once hurt will become the places where light shines through. God is not finished with your story. He's using your pain to prepare you for your purpose. And when you finally step into it, you'll realize it was worth every tear, every trial, and every test. God is rewriting your story for His glory. There are moments in life when it feels like your story has gone off course, when what you planned, prayed, and dreamed seems to have slipped through your fingers. You thought you knew how the next chapter would unfold, but suddenly, everything changed. The script you were reading from was torn apart, and now you find yourself standing in the middle of a sentence that doesn't make sense. It's in those moments of uncertainty and confusion that God steps in with his pen and whispers, "Let me write from here." Well, your story isn't over. What you see as an ending is often just an edit in progress. God doesn't throw away your story because it's messy. He rewrites it with mercy. He takes the broken sentences, the painful paragraphs, and the chapters filled with tears, and he begins to craft something beautiful out of the chaos. You may feel like everything has fallen apart, but to God it's all falling into place. We often want to hand God a finished script, our plan, our vision, our timeline, and ask him to bless it. But God doesn't need your outline. He has already written your destiny. He is the author and the finisher of your faith. He sees the beginning and the end all at once. And even when the pages don't make sense to you, they make perfect sense to him. The same pen that wrote your past is now shaping your future, and every twist in the plot has purpose. Sometimes, God allows edits because the story you wrote for yourself is too small for what he has in mind. You wanted comfort, but he's writing transformation. You wanted safety, but he's writing strength. You wanted everything to make sense, but he's writing something that will bring him glory. The story God writes is never just about you. It's about what he will reveal through you. Think about Joseph. His story began with dreams, but then came betrayal, slavery, and prison. Every chapter seemed worse than the last, yet God was writing a masterpiece. When Joseph finally stood as a ruler in Egypt, he looked back and said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." What others used to hurt him, God used to position him. That's what happens when God rewrites your story. He redeems every wrong turn, every wound, and every waiting season. Maybe you've been living in regret, replaying the pages of your past that you wish you could erase. The moments you spoke out of anger, the relationships that fell apart, the choices you made in fear. You keep rereading them, but God says, "Stop rehearsing what I've already redeemed." The blood of Jesus didn't just forgive you, it rewrote your ending. Grace took your story out of your hands and placed it in the hands of the one who can turn every failure into a testimony. God is not intimidated by your mistakes. He specializes in rewriting broken stories. He can take what the enemy tried to use to destroy you and use it to display his power. When he rewrites your story, he doesn't just fix what went wrong. He gives new meaning to it. The pain that once defined you becomes the platform that refines you. The heartbreak that once crushed you becomes the evidence that God still heals. Every scar becomes a sentence in a story that gives him glory. You might not like the chapter you're in right now. Maybe it's dark, confusing, or lonely. But just because this page hurts doesn't mean the story is over. The author is still writing. You can't skip ahead, but you can trust that what he's writing will make sense when the book is complete. Every delay, every detour, and every disappointment is part of the divine design. God doesn't waste ink. Every word serves a purpose. Sometimes, God rewrites your story by removing characters who can't go with you to the next chapter. You may wonder why certain people left, why certain opportunities closed, or why certain dreams didn't survive. It's because the next scene requires a different setting. The characters that once supported your growth might now limit it. God isn't being cruel. He's clearing space for the people and places that align with his plan. And when God rewrites your story, He doesn't always change your circumstances immediately. Sometimes He changes you first. He strengthens your faith, sharpens your perspective, and renews your mind. He teaches you to see through His eyes instead of your own. You start realizing that your story isn't about what you've lost, but about what God is building through the loss. Every time you thought the story was over, every heartbreak, every setback, every closed door was actually a comma, not a period. God paused the sentence because He had something greater to add. You thought it was the end, but it was only the middle. He's the kind of author who can take a tragedy and turn it into a triumph, a mess into a message, a test into a testimony. You may not realize it yet, but someone else's breakthrough is hidden in your story. The same God who's rewriting your pain into purpose will use your story to rewrite someone else's faith. When people see what you've overcome, they'll believe that God can do it for them too. That's why your story matters. It's not just about survival, it's about reflection. It reflects His power, His faithfulness, His glory. And when God finally turns the page, when He brings you into that season of fulfillment, you'll look back and realize that every chapter had to happen. You'll see that if one thing had gone differently, you wouldn't have met the people, learned the lessons, or discovered the strength you have now. You'll thank Him for every detour because it led you to your destiny. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is surrender your pen. Stop trying to control how the story unfolds and trust the one who writes with eternity in mind. God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your permission. Let Him rewrite it. Let Him take what was broken and make it whole. Let Him transform your timeline into a testimony. You might not be where you thought you'd be, but you're right where God wants you to be. His pen never slips. His timing is never off. His edits are never wasted. You may not understand the sentence you're in, but when the book is finished, you'll see His fingerprints all over every page. And here's the most beautiful part. When God rewrites your story, He doesn't erase your pain, He redeems it. He keeps the scars, but He removes the shame. He lets the world see that even when the plot went dark, the light of His grace never went out. The story becomes a testimony not of how strong you were, but of how faithful He was. So if life feels messy, uncertain, or incomplete right now, don't close the book. God is still writing. He's turning disappointment into destiny, brokenness into beauty, confusion into calling. The author hasn't finished your story yet, and when He's done, it will be worth every twist, every tear, and every turn of the page. Your story will not end in failure. It will end in glory, His glory. And when people read your life, they won't see defeat. They'll see redemption. They won't see tragedy. They'll see transformation. Because the greatest stories are the ones rewritten by the hands of God. You've cried your tears. You've walked through the fire. You've questioned the why and wrestled with the when. But through every valley, through every disappointment, through every delay, God was still writing. The pain you endured wasn't wasted. The storm you survived wasn't pointless. Every broken piece, every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer, it all had purpose. You thought the chapter was ending in defeat, but God was setting the stage for destiny. What you thought was rejection was really redirection. What looked like loss was a lesson. What felt like a breaking was really a birthing. So don't despise your story, and embrace it. Because the same God who walked you through the valley is the same God who will lift you to the mountain. You've been in the dark room, but that's where God develops his masterpieces. You've been pressed, but that's how oil is made. You've been broken, but that's how glory is revealed. You're not who you used to be. You're stronger, wiser, deeper. You carry a testimony now, not a perfection, but a perseverance. And when people look at you, they won't just see survival, they'll see resurrection power. So lift your head, wipe your tears, take a breath, because this, right here, right now, is the moment heaven turns the page. Your story is not over, it's just beginning. The pen is still in God's hand, and he's about to write something so beautiful that when you read it back, all you'll be able to say is, it had to happen. The pain had a purpose. The delay was divine. The rejection was redirection. And the God who started the story finished it for his glory. This is your turning point, from disappointment to destiny, from pain to purpose, from brokenness to breakthrough. Now give God praise, because he's rewriting your story.